Yes. Well, is there a very wealthy Greek American that endowed something on anything or any concepts? There is, right? So his name's Peter Tom. Peter Tom.
As you do a little pause, let me remind everybody, Natalia is on from Athens. I hang out, so make sure to speak up and, as appropriate, identify yourselves. And this, if you really want something to push you to sleep, this is going to be archived on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
And so you can watch it at your leisure.
Go viral.
For free. So, anyway. But Natalia, this is a fairly complicated hotel, difficult to find a room. So I think folks are still coming in. Can you hear us, Natalia?
Yes, yes, I'm fine.
That's okay. Okay, that's good. Just checking. And there is a chat feature. If you scroll over the screen, at the upper left, there's a little blue icon.
I have already sent you a message that I can hear you.
Very excellent. Thanks. I can hear you, she says. There you go.
Did you come to this?
Yeah.
I did. All right.
You asked last night, no, what's at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? Said Jim. So I, you know, something about that. We'll try to wait for Jim and Jennifer ought to be here for sure. Oh, yeah. I saw yesterday. I saw last night.
Oh, do you want John from the database guy to call in because it helps? He had some ideas of IT in terms of tracking visitors to school through our database.
We can do the hangout too.
You can do the hangout.
Yeah, we're gonna have 10 seats. Actually, 15 because it's enterprise.
All right, I'm gonna ask.
version.
I'm gonna tell him.
But, just give me the email and I'll send it along. Or have him send me an email.
Okay.
Or copy and paste.
This is a conversation. You might share that stuff.
Right.
Well, you hear how it goes.
You might talk. I assume Jim's.
Well, this is everybody.
I assume Jim is.
You're talking about, hey, this is database, is what we're doing. It's great to track. So if you have Al's email him and join the hangout. I can actually give you contact. All right?
He's got the email.
Great. Yeah, do that right away. So thanks a lot. Where are you doing that?
Unless you want to do right on the.
All right, hope that email helped. Let's see. Bring in a couple more people to hang out. Jim.
Yeah, Jim's coming.
And we're getting a couple more people to hang out.
Did you want to use the speakers?
Well, it seems to kill microphones for some reason.
Oh,
I don't know why.
well, it comes out and then you turn the speakers on.
Are they on? Speakers on? They seem to be on.
Yeah, they're on.
But when I plugged it in here,
Yeah, then the sound.
but Natalia couldn't hear us for some reason. It killed the microphone, the outbound.
I can see you partially now, but it doesn't matter. You know, only half of the screen. I don't know why. You keep disappearing. Deborah's.
So after this, it's a tight lead. Everybody leave right now.
19 happening right now.
I guess, no.
We get 3 minutes with just the people for conversation, just 3 minutes. Whoever's, actually, I'll tell you right now, who's going, conversation with renting vans, from here to go there. I need to make those things. So it's you and Julie, right? We'll be together, right? And Jennifer, you'll be at the hotel? You're coming to the conversation? I'm sorry, the conversation on Sunday? We need transportation on
Yes.
Monday. Yeah, so definitely, and you're 2, and Bruce, and you're 1, and Bruce, you're 2.
Oh, I better write it.
Oh, you are? Oh, you're good. Anyhow, anybody else want to go? Who's here? You're more than welcome. Katie? Good to have you.
Great.
And you're all coming to the hotel tonight, right? Yeah, it's cool. We'd like to dinner afterwards. I know for this.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's what you do what you want. That's all. We're San Francisco, so you'll make some sort of there's no good thing. Okay, yeah, so we just break on the thing. That's what I'm trying to do.
All right, I guess we should get started. Others may wander in. Make sure to speak up and identify yourselves as appropriate. We have John, and Natalia, who will hang out. So, and as I mentioned, a couple of others, if you reach out to sleep, this will be archived on YouTube. You can view again at your leisure. Not necessarily recommended, but it will be a record of what we talked about tonight. Just a couple of words of introduction.
What's that reason?
The sound of, at the other end, yeah. Yeah. Kill the sound here, but then they ask questions. Wait a minute. They need to turn off their microphones. Those of you out at the YouTube, could you mute your microphones, please? I think I can probably do it too. Here. And then just fire it up again. Actually, I can do it remotely. Fire it up again if you want to send a question or ask a question. But there are icons at the top of the image. If you roll the cursor over the image, icons will appear, and there'll be a little microphone icon. You can hit that. If it's not red, tap that, and it'll kill your sound. But just fire it up again if you want to participate by voice. There's also the chat feature, which you activate by hitting a little icon in the upper left. We'll try to monitor that. Okay. Can you all hear us out in Google land? Just give us a thumbs up. And we may kill the image as well, but we had trouble with bandwidth and stuff like that. But they should be able to hear us. But we'll try to pay attention to the chat space. All right. Welcome to this year's incarnation of the IT committee meeting. We'd hoped to have this yesterday prior to the executive committee and all of that, but given the meetings in Berkeley and elsewhere, difficult to get that done. We couldn't do it late in the day because we wanted to make sure folks in Greece could participate. Libraries and Archives, which I attended yesterday, was noon here, fairly late for those participating from there. But anyway, here we are. So I did represent the committee at the Libraries and Archives and also executive committee yesterday. And we've had a lot of conversation, as you all know, by email up to this point, talking about how best to manage our information assets, information resources. There certainly is not unanimity within the committee, and I try to express that also to the executive committee. In any case, here we are, and we can move forward. No particular order of things. There may be some issues in the general report to the managing committee we put out, which itself does not contain any recommendation with respect to CIO or whatever we call such position, because that was too early in the process. In our conversations, Mary always had to get the packet together for the management committee. She didn't blame Mary. No, I mean Mary and all. They do a great job. Typically, as academics, of course, we want to submit our reports 2.5 seconds before the meeting, and then we're good to go. But that obviously can't happen. And so the general report to the management committee is comprised primarily of reports from Greece, from Bruce and others, and James. And and folks, and that's all very good, illustrating the excellent work that's happening in our various offices and departments. But clearly, and please suggest other agenda items. Clearly, our main agenda is how do we best manage our information assets or information resources, by which I mean, and here you can take it to task, but when I speak of information, I'm really talking about the whole spectrum, not taking over the libraries, but including the libraries, publications, today, traditional print or e-books or foreign digital, that kind of thing, to administrative computing, for what goes on in the lab, the excavations, all that kind of thing. That is, how does one provide best oversight, exploitation of synergies, that kind of thing. Another issue that the committee has talked about a lot by email this year, appropriately, and it's a continuation of the conversation, is the notion of an operational budget versus a grant-driven kind of thing. We've had wonderful grants to do fantastic work. Of course, an issue is sustaining all of that. We do need more folks on the ground, maintaining these things, doing some back-end coding, entering data, whatever needs to be done, and it's very difficult to sustain fabulous projects if we don't have that kind of budget, and it's really kind of a paradigm approach for the school. Don't have continuous support to keep these things going, then the value of the original project, of course, loses value considerably. Anyway, so let me open it up to conversation or discussion. But perhaps I should give a little feedback from the conversation we had at Library and Archives and Executive Committee, and also emails with various folks. One of the problems, and maybe we should deal with this right away, is the title should have a person to this. A CIO is a term that's used in, well, it's used in business. It means one thing. Bruce has been very helpful and sort of educate me about that. It has one meaning in business, so it means something to those coming from that community, and they're important for us. They often run us nice big checks. You have to be aware of that. But also, in, say, a liberal arts college, it has a certain sense, and it's not the same thing. Also, the word is loaded as well. Chief whatever this person is, probably won't be called a CIO, nor is any model in North America provide the exact paradigm for the thing we're talking about, but it does provide some parallels, at least, that the CIO in the position. But CIO is probably a problematic. I've always seen comments talking about the structured management. In fact, the fact of the matter is we do need more people on the ground to manage all of this. So, and I think we can all agree with that. It's a matter of staffing and sustaining and stuff like that. So I don't think that's a huge point of contention, but how do we best manage our various information resources? So with that, let me open it up if folks have things to add. Maybe I should do.
Well, I wonder how if you could talk.
Make sure to speak up so they can hear.
Yeah, since you were the architect and I appreciate writing this proposal, your arguments were up by manager, CIO, top level position versus the idea of Jim's Florida people and what kind of authority we would give to that person to integrate all of the digital assets, things that go on at the school, both in and in,
right,
which is a huge job for one person.
I see this manager is just that, the level of authority, whether exercised directly from the director, doesn't matter. You know, we can talk about that, but one way or another, this person would have the authority to realize synergies between different operations of the school, among various operations of the school, and to help develop, implement, and sustain a broader vision, that is, information assets vision, and how best to kind of keep that thing going. As it stands now, we have wonderful information managers in various parts of the school. but there's no overarching management or sort of development implementation of a vision. In terms of sort of actual work, I mean, this person would not just be sort of doing the high-level sort of vision stuff and telling people what to do. You can't tell academics what to do anyway. We just don't respond well to such things. But this person would be not only providing some leadership in terms of the vision, overarching kinds of issues, but doing things like participating or managing the conversion of the Library of Congress. There's a specific and fairly immediate need. Develop a coordinated strategy, as I've already said, for asset management, information resources. This person would be someone with an academic vision, not just a tech person. Here's a terminology problem. It's not a CTO or Chief Technology Officer, at least as that's not how it's really done in smaller institutions in the States, but rather someone often coming out of the academic world, perhaps the library world, who has developed an interest and ability and expertise in things digital as well. A strictly digital, technical kind of computer person doesn't necessarily understand what's going on on the ground or under the ground in excavation, whatever the case is. We're kind of a tough nut to crack in humanities and social sciences. So this person has to have a sense of the academic world, the kinds of things that we do. That CIOs, in the academic sense at least, or information technology is not a matter now simply of technologists providing back-end coding or whatever for clients, that is academics, but rather as they are collaborators. It's a different kind of model. It's not a matter of a vendor and a client kind of relationship, but rather working together with folks in that kind of academic environment. Other kinds of things. We have, the development of Born Digital, and Kathleen's, work at Corinth is a nice example of that. Administrative computing, security, and Jim can speak to this. A lot of things are already in progress in terms of security for library labs, card access to various buildings, that kind of thing. User services, the American Academy of Rome, for example, has a nice corner for meal reservations, room reservations, this, that, and the other. And I think all of those capabilities exist within the school system, but not necessarily, an easily accessible single point of access. Web management overall, keeping an eye on the web. Various things are falling by the cracks. Different web managers are doing pretty good jobs of maintaining the sites, but you do need some consistency. We also need to move the web forward. Now, this is one tough deal in terms of modernizing the web, moving from static pages to something more dynamic. But once you've done that, you've got to sustain. You've got to make sure that things are kept up to date, that things are modernized as appropriate. Just that matter. A chief information manager, whatever I call it, also would develop and lead, I've already mentioned this concept, but develop and lead an operational budget. We really do need, and schools in the States have had to bite the bullet and figure out priorities and this, that, and the other. The school doesn't have a whole lot of money. We know that. That's a common thing. But the school can move forward. And Natalia has made this point very forcefully in her report that's the managing committee. We need an operating budget to sustain what we're doing, and the chief information manager would help develop and oversee that. Okay, so information. Anyway, that's sort of a wandering description of what I see such a manager would be doing.
This also has gone to the vision task force of the board, so this is on the it becomes a high priority to figure out.
Getting into the operation budget was really high. Maybe even higher than getting well. But I also think I was a good academy with my friend, and was fortunate to meet John Barrow, who's he's their consultant for IT, and the academy just 2 years ago created the umbrella that brings all of these things together, including came to our Congress a year and a half ago in their library, and they have the same kind of problems as we do. So don't you think that we should be talking to John Spadaro, Kim Bowes, and at least finding out their experience with, I know their needs are different because they, for instance, don't have the excavation, either the ongoing excavation or the excavation archive that we do, but they have many of the same issues, and I think we should.
Yeah, I was there too, and I did talk to him about this a bit. And I think that, for instance, their intranet thing, which is called Janet, which is a phenomenal communication resource within the community. I mean, that we should absolutely have. That's one thing. No.
What was it called? What was it called?
What?
What's it called?
Janet.
You can't access it.
No, I'm just asking. It's
Janice is there.
and internet's pretty sexy for donors, I think.
I should mention also in terms of what the chief information manager would oversee is, and we talked about this at the meetings yesterday, social media, which is becoming more and more important. And I know we're going to help in the short term to get some of that stuff going, but it's sustaining, it's maintaining.
But so, since you just mentioned social media, people should know that the trustees, 2 trustees have stepped up, and they have funded a year's trial hiring a full-time social media manager. And we have a committee together working on this. We're going to meet in January after the meetings to move forward on it because we have the funding now. I have an appointment with Dionysios Kolokotsis, who's the head of Google in Greece, to talk with him about it. And I've already had one conversation with a social media manager that CYA hired, and I'm meeting with her again just to sort of get inside her head about what it is she's doing. So we'll move on that. It's a 1-year trial, and it might be wildly successful to have someone coordinating Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, working with the web, those who are responsible for departmental web pages, and really ramping up our visibility to YouTube, Facebook, Google, all of those things. If it's wildly successful, we'll want to continue to do it. And it will cost us a minimum of $20,000 a year in Greece for a Greek hire or someone who's willing to live and work in Greece. That's not a very big salary, by the way. We may have to increase the amount, and it immediately addresses the fundamental problem. I'm not so certain that we would be having this conversation and this felt need around a CIO if we hadn't had more than 10 years of extreme austerity budgets that have cut budget lines in every department and have put an absolute freeze on hiring personnel. And what the staff have said is they don't want a naked king. They don't want to gymnos vasilevs. They're happy to have the concept of a manager go forward, but not without the people who we need to have working on the ground to support those who are in the trenches and trying to do everything at once. So Fruits needs a programmer. We need a digital and data asset manager, and we need a community social media manager. So those are 3 line positions that we absolutely need to move forward on this. And it may be, this is my point, I just want to reiterate it, it may be that if we had those positions, we would find that many of the things that are unattended would already have been attended or would be taken care of rather quickly because we're aware that they need to be done. But we haven't dealt with the website because we've had considerable changeover in the Princeton administration. We had Mary Jane Gabenda, who was managing it, step away for 6 months or more before George brought her back into the fold. And so we never sort of worked up a request for proposal to figure out what it would cost to fix the website and develop a plan to go out and raise the funds in order to do a one-time fix in the website. And I was just speaking with Tarek about this in Athens, and he said, why don't we do this locally in Greece and deal with the website? And he's saying that he thinks the costs for doing this are much, much lower, and we need to find out, but much more than what we might anticipate they would be if we hired a U.S. firm to do it. What I'm just stating by way of these examples is that before we leap forward and try to commit to a priority in fundraising, to raise how many ever millions of dollars to hire a CIO type person, I think that it would be practical and feasible in terms of our finances to deal with the on-the-ground problems that the staff are faced with on a daily basis by adding in the personnel that we need to manage a better IT system and infrastructure. And I think until we know that, we really won't know, we won't be in a position to articulate adequately and to go out and say why we need to hire another administrative official at a higher level to manage all these things.
Let me ask a question. So like you said 3 positions: social media, program manager, and digital asset manager. Programmer and digital asset manager. Was there somebody I missed?
Digital and data.
Digital and data. Okay, so the one question I have is, are these positions, are there individuals that, in other words, instead of doing a full hire, so now they're on staff and every year we're committing to this, is there a way to have a budget? Does that work? To have a you know, una porción privada on a certain amount of money that you're able to pull from to pay for as long as that lasts, if you will, as a trial, as a proof of concept type of thing, and we can show that? Does that work? So if you got $50,000, could you use as a kitty to hire these people? Is that a possibility?
Well, I mean, the idea behind the social media manager is to sort of test it out
Right.
and see how it works out.
Does the programmer work the same way?
Well, I mean, I would say no. I would say that we don't need to fund these off soft money and then have the soft money terminate, because that will just, then the bag falls back onto Bruce, James, and Tarek, and Konstantinos. If you look at what Tarek and Konstantinos do in managing hardware and software, and then providing support, 2 people providing support for all the operations from Corinth, Niagara, to the Canadian archives, the school, all of the computers, hardware, managing these big grants like the ASCSA, the 135,000 object digitization grant. You'd just be stunned at what they're accomplishing with so little staffing. So I think fundamentally the need for staffing is there. It doesn't make sense for someone like Bruce to be providing us with leadership in innovative programming and spend all of his time writing code. That's a waste of his resources and his ability to serve both the specific goals of what he's doing in the Niagara and the larger needs of the institution with, for example, the complex operations around making ASCSA.net a really sophisticated tool that provides high-quality data to our researchers. To make that happen, we need people who are full-time employees and who are really get inside all the programming and data needs that the institution has. We have how many records? 1 million, and way over 1 million records. Many of these records need to be scrubbed and cleaned. Look at the problems that you have in Princeton with our data records for members and friends of the institution. I mean, it's embarrassing that we're in a situation in 2016 where Hal, as head of the Alumni Association, has a better data record of our alumni than the office in Princeton. And you don't hire people on soft money to fix that. What we need are people with the skills and the experience to work with our data records, make them up to date, and develop more sophisticated ways of using them. And we have a plan that we're working on in Athens, but it's being executed in the very little spare time that Tarek or Bruce or the other IT staff have to give to it. And that's our real problem, I think. I mean, you guys are all out. I'm speaking too much because you guys are in the trenches, but I think I'm advocating for what it is that you've clarified is the primary need.
Which takes us back to, we need an operational budget. That has to be the highest priority, even higher than any kind of manager or umbrella. Right? I mean, we're 15 or 20 years behind all academic institutions in switching over to an operational budget. We really are.
But we're a research institution to begin with. We're not a college, we're not a university, we're definitely not the American Academy of Health.
No, I know that. But Our university, for instance, started switching over to an operational budget in about 1989. And by now it's $1 million. We really are very far behind.
I would agree. I mean, and the staff position you're talking about, that seems to me that's operational budget, right? And so I think we're kind of in agreement.
And this is a very good reason for us to be having these conversations, putting them on the vision committee's task force, making it clear to the executive committee of the board and the treasurer of the board that as we move forward and begin to deal with our fiscal situation, as the dollar and euro move more and more towards parity, that every possible saving that we have in our annual budget outlays be dedicated to meeting these long unmet needs rather than other priorities that we might have, such as increasing the endowment.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I mean, we are talking about a paradigm shift. And, that's what Kathleen is talking about as well. And that means we have to think about priorities. But sustaining the stuff that we might have a manager help with. But if we don't sustain it, there's no point. We're just spinning and working these individual projects that kind of spin for a little while and so diminish. So I see that as a very high priority for the school. Got to sustain the stuff, and that's we're really talking operational philosophy versus this sort of sporadic grant-driven. The grants have been fantastic, and I'm not arguing against grants, obviously, but we have to sustain these things. So that gets to that operational mode of thought. The school's not been in the operational mode of thought when it comes to information asset management.
You've got an IT sinking fund, right?
No, we have, the budget for IT is $175,000 a year. Right?
For
IT is $175,000.
But hardware, right? Is primarily focused on hardware replacement?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember that was a bunch, but I mean, we do have a bunch. That would
So they could have to.
She thinks you're not here. Just wave.
And we even have revenue.
Jim, are you saying that you think these staffing needs are a priority over CIO position? Is that what the argument is here? First, we move from operations?
Yeah, that's why a lot of these are the same way. I mean, some of these projects are temporary things, not long term. So think about things like our content. We have to digitize our content. This is like a project with a certain big push at the beginning, but then kind of tail off at the end. Things like, our intranets, the things like our upgrading our technical infrastructure, creating something like Janet that would be able to serve our internal community, where we have all this stuff in place. There's a lot of push up front for creation and then slow trickle down. So a lot of this, I like this idea more of a budget idea rather than trying to say we need this person, this person, this person, this person. Yeah, it'd be nice to have a full-time programmer on staff that was there, who's flexible, and who could shift between these various projects. But a lot of the work we're talking about, from converting our content to digital, somehow enriching it so that it's useful to people who want to use it, making it compatible with all the other information that the other schools are doing to try to integrate with the community in that way, and then have our local tech where it's serving our needs as an organization, doing what we needed to do to get our work done, and then the whole publication and the social media side, getting it out in a way. The social media side publication will always be there. We'll always need that person, and it's a great position. And I think once we do the year, they'll see how useful it is. And I think, George, you should be able to easily get funding for that program. We'll need that person, and that person can do stuff with keeping. I don't know how much we do in the website on that, but if we had a local, flexible, another IT programmer person who is good on the code, it always follows the code. They pick up the programmers, and they're the people who do the work.
You get one of these people, one or two of these people, and they're flexible enough to shift around through these different priorities. They can work on like a Janet type system, getting it set up for a few years, shift to going to website stuff for a few years. So maybe, you know, you could fund the CIO kind of idea manager position out of this same kind of potential budget. You could see it more as a lump thing rather than just simple this staff, this staff, this staff, this staff, this staff. And that way, stuck in one spot, and then, you know, we're like, we need it over here now. I don't know how that would work on a funding level, but from just trying to get stuff done with a minimum amount of money, that's the way I would try to play it. Is have some kind of flexible budget, some person who's in charge of it who can, you know, we need that person who can go across the departments and do that. We do need that person, we know that. But we also need people on the ground who are working with the data. I mean, we have this outsourcing money now. This is working pretty good in terms of doing stuff with our data. We could use more on that for cleaning the data, adding the bits and pieces we need to make it more compatible and useful. That can follow more maybe of an outsourcing model. We're going to try that this year. We have 6 months. We have some of the money left over from the outsourcing fund. We're going to try to pick up a programmer, someone who can help code, and see what we can do with that for 6 months. So we might have something by June where we can say, here's what we can do in this regard. But I think you have to keep it flexible because we don't have a lot of money to play with, and we probably won't ever. All right, George.
What I hoped I was suggesting when I brought up the academy model is that what they have is a consultant who's there twice a year for 1 week. Right? It's not a consultant that you pay on a one-time basis. It's somebody who comes back every 6 months for a week, and you could think of that model instead of a kind of continuous manager position.
Deal with that.
That would satisfy, I think, both what Bruce is saying and what
we're hoping to deal with that over breakfast meeting with a high-profile individual who we hope will be willing to come in and do some even pro bono consulting.
Yeah.
But we do need someone then in the ground as well who's going between the departments and coordinating efforts between the various departments and the data and the things like that. We do need that kind of on-staff person, I think, there all the time doing this. Because right now it's like I see James, you know, once a month or something, we get together, and what we're able to accomplish is good through these collaborations, this collaboration idea. And we need more of that somehow. But we're all so busy doing our work that we don't have a lot of time to, you know, go around. I think the social media position will help a lot because this will be a person going around the school, and they'll have a big picture of everything going on, and they can help say, oh, there's all these things over here, and maybe that person can function as a glue between.
As a glue. I mean, I agree with your. I think your two operating principles. That is coordination, but also flexibility and nimbleness. We don't know what 2 years, 5 years from now is going to look like. And so if we slot people in too rigidly to, well, this person does just this and this other staff person does just that, that's not how this business works. It is moving far more quickly than any of us can imagine. So flexibility, nimbleness, being able to adapt and move forward and hopefully provide some leadership in this area versus sort of following behind is, I think, what we're doing now.
The kinds of things we're talking about don't actually impinge on library and publications.
Oh, they will.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
I mean, they should, but what I'm hearing is about other aspects of information.
Well, I guess what Bruce, you're suggesting is that this.
In there too. I have publication, our whole what we're going to do in the future with publications. That's a huge part of this. How we're going to get the information out. How we're going to give the raw data to people, how we're going to give the final publications to people. Yeah, this is a big part in the work you're doing with your project as well. These are all the things we're going to have to deal with probably in the future as things change. So I see that as very much a part of this whole equation. Future publications and e-publications, and how, is this going to change? Are we going to keep doing the traditional model? Are we going to get more flexible? That's a part of this, I think. But the libraries, the research part, organizing all that information so that the library organization and how that's integrated in with the rest of the digital data we have. I mean, Chuck, you know how that goes when you start getting all the digital data and trying to integrate it in with all the traditional resources. This is not an easy thing, but it all kind of falls. They have to collaborate and work together in some way.
And I mean, I don't know whether you see this social media person being able to help, broker that. We may need a more senior kind of person to help broker that kind of collaboration. Publications across the board, the AgRob, Corinth, other publications the school's involved in. And
the publications committee, though, is going to also need to be involved because
absolutely.
Increasingly, things like ASCSA net is not actually under the purview of the publications committee, and yet it's a public.
Right. Information resources touch everything across the school. We just can't escape that conclusion. So you're absolutely right. And this committee, the purview of this committee is a little sort of difficult, I guess, to define, right? Because we're sort of doing mostly digital stuff, but as you point out, it really does embrace its libraries, its publications, it's administrative, the works. We really can't escape that conclusion. So again, to me, this argues for some kind of more senior, not necessarily an officer, but a some manager who either on his own or through the director is able to implement the kinds of collaborative or encourage whatever. I mean, but anyway, encourage, promote, foster the sorts of collaborations and synergies that we're talking about, and as an eye to the future, as the nature of publication, for example, changes, as the nature of the library, not that print publication will ever go away, but as the nature of a library evolves through time. We need someone to help us keep moving forward.
And as Jennifer brought up at the very beginning, it's an authority issue too. There needs to be a certain level of authority there that they can, and it has to be very clearly defined in order for this to work across the board, because there's going to be conflicts between us in terms of what we think we should do.
There are necessarily, and there should be conflicts, right? Because there are obligations to one's own sort of particular area, and that's appropriate. We need someone who can help bridge that and look for synergies and help implement that kind of thing.
You need dialogue and dialectic, but ultimately there needs to be. Right. You can't get stuck, and this happens a lot in organizations. They're too balanced out; they'll just get stuck fighting between each other. And that doesn't work either. So I think Jennifer's right. There needs to be a clear authority written up for this kind of person.
I mean, here's an example. What has evolved through grassroots efforts with a certain amount of coordination, but expertise and funding has been lodged in particular sectors or departments of the institution without there being an integrated budget, without there being an integrated oversight and has institutional responsibility and that reports up the chain. That's of course what the basis of your proposal for a CIO is. So where you talk about where that might create conflict is in the school's continuing attempt to integrate all of its financial aspects under a single budget so that you don't have individual boats floating on their own bottoms and saying, oh, this is my money and I get to spend it the way I want, rather that everything has to be serving institutional goals while meeting specific needs. That is a real issue of tension. And it gets also to issues of governance because it gets to the issue of reporting. Who would you hire a CIO who you didn't give the authority to set up an operation, hire the people that he or she needs to make it happen, and have that kind of authority and budgetary authority over it? Because if you continue to have information technology expertise and financing lodged within individual departments, we're going to continue to have these problems that we're discussing here. And so we really are at a tipping point. But I still, I mean, having said that, I'm actually still arguing that I would rather that we moved incrementally and made sure that we're making the best use of the folks that we have here who have deep knowledge on the ground of how things work and where they want to get within an integrated posture, because it might be more economical for us and also more, salubrious as a community to make sure that we're elevating positions and people who are on the ground today by giving them the support they need to see what they can actually produce. And that's because I'm very afraid that it would be very difficult for us to raise the money necessary to pay for a CIO at the executive level. I mean, I just think it's a huge commitment, and once you create a position like that at a high administrative level, it's hard to do away with it, especially when it gets enshrined, within MC regulations. Because they become fixed positions.
Of course, yep. Jennifer?
No, I was just gonna say, I think we should, move away from this term, the CIO immediately set some big dollar signs. I mean, and then you're talking about more of a manager. Is there some, middle ground here that we're talking about? I think Jim's presenting sort of this negative image of the CIO. I mean, yes, they would have authority, and they would have to coordinate staff, not necessarily maybe hire some new staff, but I wonder if there's a middle ground here, that we can get at least the vision committee to sign on to and start getting the money for it.
I think that's a reasonable level that would provide a sort of coordination. Now, the authority is always going to be an issue, right? If it's not a senior level officer, but that authority may have to be exercised through the director. Right now, the director is de facto the CIO. I mean, you've got to watch, manage, keep an eye on, try to get up to speed on everything that's going on in terms of information resources. The director has neither the time nor, to do that, nor the time to develop the expertise. But some middle level manager would. That would be the purview of that person. So right now, we're just sort of limping along on the director has to be de facto the CIO, and I don't think that's a reasonable model. I'm sure Jim's doing a great job. I don't mean to, but that's where we stand now, right?
Coordinator. I mean, he is coordinator from the different parts of the school coordinator.
So
we need somebody who can also. We have nobody in the library who really has
expertise.
Library science.
Right. Yeah.
Skills
Yes.
that we need if we are really going.
Are there people like that in Greece, or would it be an international search?
I mean, my little research on that suggests that folks in Europe, there are folks in Europe.
Oh, I know she does, but I don't know about
And she's actually.
We have two librarians who are well-trained librarians.
Maria, and not only that, she is.
in
now-
IT, not the ITS.
On the IT side, she is enrolling in a postgraduate program at Drexel University in digital library science. It's, we're trying to fund it out of a little bit of money we have, because professional development is really important for us. And it's the library staff on both sides of the street that are taking the most advantage of it in terms of going out and taking courses in England, taking courses in the US, going to programs in Greece, in Europe, and in the United States, where they're really in touch with what's happening in the field. They're working very hard in archives, the Canadian and Blagan, and you're distributing among the staff the little bit of money that we have to advance development. And I think that's an awfully important thing for us to do. First, because it really builds tremendous esprit de corps among the staff when they realize that we may not be able to be giving them salary increases that they might deserve in a very difficult economic environment in Greece, but they're actually able to enroll in programs of professional advancement within their field. And, that's to me, that's gold in terms of increasing our ability to have people on the ground keeping up with what's happening, and then they know where we're trying to, what they want to get to.
But nonetheless, this reclassification has at least embedded in the proposal project manager, which presumably, if there were an IT box or whatever,
Mhm.
school could be the manager of that.
And I see this person as enabling librarians and others to do
Yeah,
even
right, yeah.
better work, empowering them to do even stronger work. I mean, the gyms outside, our librarians in particular, but others, everybody, right, is doing incredible stuff, and they're developing professionally. And I think we all agree, we endorse that concept, and the school should support professional development. A manager would enable these folks to do even greater work through synergies, through coordination, and collaboration. So all of what Jim's talking about is fantastic. I'm still much in favor of some kind of coordination.
What do you think is a better sell if we're going out?
Well, I got to tell you that looking at the maturity of the development office efforts so far, which means it's still young, right? So it takes time to cultivate donors. I think that this is a very sexy topic. I think technology resonates with a lot of people. I can tell you, I had a lunch with an older gentleman that I was very surprised. Went from interest in Wiener Lab to, hey, there's this guy in what I met one day, and it was pretty cool stuff. I got shocked to hear that. So there's definitely legs on that, on this. My point is, because we're in a that there's got to be something, and in other words, that's why I came to the soft money. So I go back to a question when we were around a table like this at another foundation I was at. The largest donor said, what would you do with $10 million? Okay. And he said, unless you can tell me what you would do with $10 million, you're never going to raise that. And it forced the board to go back and look and say, what would you do with $10 million? And what would it look like? And how does, and all this other stuff, whatever. Okay, we're not going for $10 million. But I could ask the question, so if I got you $100,000 tomorrow, what would you do with that towards this? And then what would you do with 250 and what would you do with 500? I think those are legitimate quality goals. Now that's going to have to force you the question, because are you going to go out and hire someone for this position? Or can we manage with what we've got and sort of get some things in so we get from the 1 to the 250 to the 5 and then say, okay, now this is what our next step is. If I can get that, there are active people today that would be that I feel very strongly would be interested, but I need to know what those steps are. If you're telling me we need to endow a position to hire a CIO, it's a different animal, and I don't think we're mature enough yet in our development functions to be able to lock something like that in. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't be heading in that direction, because the people that are going to give you 100 or 250 have probably the ability to give you much more. They just want some proof of concept. So I mean, this is so exciting to see all these different players around the table. And I want to ask the question, what would you do with 100 grand? Tell me, and I would love to hear that, so how would you invest that? What would you do with 250?
There are some problems with that, though, in this specific respect of you need to have a little bit of permanence in order to attract the right people. I mean, if I can go out and say, okay, I can get you this job for 1 year, you come do this, that's a lot less interesting to these kind of tech people these days who can work anywhere for any amount of money. There needs to be some level.
So do you need a 2-year
commitment?
Let me ask you, 2 or 3 year, or I mean, is it just permanent? That's the question. If you tell me 3 year, I can go to a guy and say,
so like I know
years.
certain people who I would love to bring in who are extremely talented, working for companies now who they are underpaid in Greece. We give them good salaries. They're not going to jump ship unless I can offer them something a little bit more permanent. They'll take their permanent job at €1,000 a month now for the rest of their life. But if I can say, look, I can pay you $1,200 a month to come work for us, they'll do that if they know it's permanent.
Permanent. Okay, so that it's not a 3-year contract.
Indefinite. It's like an indefinite contract. So in order to get the right people to jump, they want stability. And so I can bring in hacks for a year, but I can't bring in the people who could do the job well.
And what do those type of people cost? Just so we know.
Say, I don't know, somewhere between 1,000, 2,000 a month, maybe in Greece or something like that. I think it's some people who can do this kind of work for that there, and I could probably bring some other ones over. If you want to go, you want to get the good person who's going to do real work. He's going to be a little bit more expensive. Probably between maybe 50 to 100,000 US. Yeah, that's all the other stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Just beginning.
So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I am saying that there are definitely people out there that are very interested in this type of thing. The whole challenge for me is to sit down and then to package it like I showed some of you yesterday, those proposals, and say, okay, in a very tangible way, what is our ultimate goal? What are the deliverables that we're gonna promise, and then what is it? Now, if I'm a donor that has millions of dollars, I wanna see some proof. You've done a great job with some of the funds that you had already, and you got a gift, and they did double what they asked for. That's incredible, those things, Those are incredible returns on investment.
One of the things that's been missing in our discussion is that we don't actually know, the people sitting around this table, maybe some individuals do, what kind of money do you need? I mean, Natalia's told us that if she would like 10,000 euros in her operating budget and she could accomplish X. What about the rest of you? Bruce has just put forward a number from the publications office. What number do you need? What number do we need to add to the 175,000 in the IT budget? I mean, if everybody told us, I need 10,000, I need this in my operating budget, we could then say to George, okay, we need $300,000 more in that budget.
Yeah, which is $6 million, right? It's more than $6 million at 4.5% on the 5-year running average. We're spending 4.5%. So $1 million generates $45,000 a year. So, I mean, if we're talking about operational budget, we're talking about increasing the endowment. When we look at the outlays that we're committed to, for example, finishing raising money for the West Wing and outfitting the West Wing with compact shelving and desks and all the things that are needed for the rooms, as well as the exhibition space. And following on that, because there's a domino effect, moving back to the main building and reorganizing the new space that is freed up in the main building so that we can come to a long-term solution for the disposition of holdings in the Lagan Library, because the whole floor that Natalia inhabits in the archives is freed up. There's expenditures that are tied to that. We have a 4-year building permit that's been given to us in 2013 to do the renovations for the Loring Hall, which are desperately needed. When that building permit expires, it expires. We'll have a double time getting it again. We're millions of dollars away from realizing the funds that we need to advance the Loring Hall project. The Stowe of Atlas was built finished in 1957, and it's the plumbing and the electrical wiring, roof, and everything that was built then is what's there today with minimal improvements, and it needs an enormous amount of work, which we're not fully responsible for, but we are the ones who have to give the leadership to go forward to bring that building up to snuff. There's no heating, ventilation, air conditioning system. We have a lot of things that we're already committed to, and it's a long list, and that's why this discussion has to be couched within the framework of a non-prioritized list of funding that the school needs, and the vision committee needs to grab hold of that and figure out what the priorities are for us to be able to give George a path that he can take. It doesn't mean that we can't work on many fronts at once, but we need really to organize this. It's not a simple task, and that's why my memo is oriented to basically what Jennifer was saying, a kind of middle range solution to this problem without trying to commit ourselves to expenditures that we might regret later on because they become fixed expenditures. I think we need, in other words, to be very careful and very aware of what the budgetary demands are on these kinds of desiderata. It may well be that we would put at the very top of the next range of things that we want to fund this whole technology issue and leadership within technology, because it's pressing need. No one denies that.
But there's a big difference between capital improvements and operating budget.
Well, they all cost money, and if you don't have the money, you don't have the money.
So that's why in order to get the money, what we do is we have to think in terms of deliverables at different levels. And the fact is not to be very upset and overwhelmed by it, because, you know, right now we have a $1.5 million ask to a West Wing donor that gave $1,000 max. And he asked for it, you know, when we met with him, so he's receptive of it. Will he do it? I don't know. But you can have jumps of people that are that impressed. I will say firsthand, the record of accomplishment that we have and the quality of people that are involved with the institution is wonderful and speaks volumes to donors. I've got 2 people already this week that are interested in having phone calls on technology with some of the people that are here. It's very exciting. So, and they have incredible potential. Problem is, they're not going to come out the gate like that usually, pretty much, you know. So you've got to be able to temper and say, okay, this is great. We'll try this and we'll build this up and water that plant, and it will, you know, I have no doubt that it will produce fruit, you know. So you just take a little patience.
You don't want it to blossom only once every 100
That's right. You don't want to overcommit. And then another thing, yeah, I'm concerned. That's why I was asking those lower numbers, just for, so we know. And then you can have it. You certainly can have your $5 million plan and say, hey, this is what we do with 5. You know, we endow it and we would do these things. So this is, I'm going to share that with you.
So, all it takes is money, right?
What we need is for the Vision Task Force to have a real proposal, I mean, that people have signed on to here, and so they make it a priority. But if we, so we're still in this middle ground, but we don't know exactly what we want to push them, have them push for and put on the priority list. So,
Our chief information manager, I thought that was kind of like.
well, I think we could, yeah, fudge it a little, yeah, and sort of mid-level thing, yeah. And it,
Middle ground person, that's what I heard.
You want something big enough that it, because you're going to run into the issue of sustainability, and you know the whole digital thing is about sustainability. You need to say we as an institution are committed to the very long-term preservation and providing access to this data. That is our strength, to be able to say that and mean it, and say we are going to be responsible for making this data available for a long time and keeping it, you know, it's like a plant, keeping it growing.
it is the future. I mean, we may not activate forever, but we will certainly be involved with information technology.
Well, our institution can disappear, and it will be the data that we've collected and generated and the publications that will live on. That is our.
Well, there's a solution to the financial problem. We'll just be in the virtual ether.
But after all, isn't that what the school is all about, right? The creation of, the collection of, the curation of, and the dissemination of information. And whether it's print or digital, interactive, or PDFs, whatever the case is. I mean, this is our mission as an institution, right? We do information.
So to have like a strong person there saying we are committed to this, I think is important. You don't want to water it down
and
too
another
much.
reason to have someone at that level is that they will hopefully be able to find the resources, just as we expect directors of other areas of the school to go out and help us raise that money.
Like the German school, they have half their funding is from their soft money side. So they invest in these positions, and then they use that position to generate more. So
yeah, Mary Jane's been trying to add stuff to the Hangout chat space. Let me see if I should send this. Okay, but let me talk to him from Mary Jane. Let's see, may I add, she says that the website currently is a very confused situation over who has oversight. Tarek still works on some technical stuff, but I've been tangentially involved with our old programmer, Samus. There's really no current ownership of the site. I'd load things as I can, but there's no coordination. And my first responsibility right now is donor communications. Very few other people are loading content. Let me also point out that the school has no communications department. Me working part-time does not constitute a fully functioning department, exclamation point. We need to take the whole issue of coordination of communications into account here when discussing the channels through which we distribute website, social media, our data presentation, etc. All right, so there's the view from the web. Now, you know, Jim's suggestion instead of the next iteration of priorities for budgeting, that makes a certain amount of sense. But it seems to me we need and Jennifer's point, what do we present for the, sort of as a vision? To me, this is a very high priority, getting the work done, but collaboration, coordination. To me, I mean, information again is what the school is about. So this, to me, is a very high priority. And I realize that means we have to rethink some other priorities as we move forward.
Yeah, we do what Kathy says, get, say, 10,000 here, 30,000 there. We're not coordinating things.
Right.
We're
We haven't
just
coordinated anything yet,
matching
and therefore we're not.
in a way.
No, maybe I didn't express myself. Natalia had told us that if it could be added to her as part of her operational budget, and maybe she really wanted 20,000, I was simply saying, could we get a sense from all of the IT parts of the school of what addition to their operating budget would be necessary?
See, it's good to learn from individual departments what their needs are, and that's what we did at the meeting that we had to react to this proposal. On the one hand, that's what we do annually in pre-budget meetings. Coming out of that, though, when you hear from the Gennadius Library, from Archives, from the Agorah, from Corinth, from Information Technology Services, that they all say, we don't have anybody who can manage digital and data resources that we have. That's a universal thing that we've heard. For example, we just had this 760,000 euro grant, and for reasons that we won't go into, we did not write into it that the school would hire a project manager for it, and all hell broke loose. It was an awful experience for everybody who was involved because we didn't have a dedicated person who supervised and made sure that all of the digitization went to the protocols and standards that we set. And it was supposed to be that, I mean, the way it worked out was that the contractor that got hired and got the contract was supposed to hire somebody to do that, but that's not what anybody wanted. And had we, this person that we each keep talking about, who could oversee whether it's conversion to Library of Congress or managing to make sure that all digital scans are done to standards that we all agree upon, then you won't have people like Natalia having to get down in the trenches and try to do this on their backs. That's the big problem we have. But if we respond only to individual requests in an individual fashion, we replicate the problem of not having integrated resources. So it goes back to what Bruce was saying. If we get somebody like a programmer whose job is to serve institutional needs and will be moving around from project to project and supervising them, we will be relieving departments' heads of having to be involved in that because they can depend on that kind of person to come in and do that work. And I mean, unless I'm just not hearing it properly, those are the most primary needs that we have. And I'm still saying that as useful as it would be to move to that single person who oversees all this and has the authority to manage it and the budget to deal with it, that person without the people in the trenches, has an empty
complete agreement with you, Brett.
I can't help but keep repeating this that nobody's saying don't hire a manager. They're saying don't hire a manager without the other things being part and parcel of that.
But Bruce, I think, has proposed a sort of middle, level solution, right? That is, whoever this person is, whether it's digital, or rather social media or not, but that starts with flexibility to help leverage coordination and collaboration. So what I fear about what your model is,
someone who's doing Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Well, no, I mean, no, there may be, I realize it's quite a lot here, but without some kind of coordination, that is, this person you're talking about is going to be concerned with digital assets running around the Agorah, Corinth, this, that, and the other. Serving individual needs as kind of a vendor, that's the model. That's not a model that fosters any kind of collaboration or cooperation, because that person doesn't have the overarching authority to, you know, to see synergies between the Agora and Corinth, for example.
Right, but I would rather that we turn to people like Bruce and Tarek and James to operate in a small committee that has, you know, I mean, I'm not so certain that for someone like Mary Jane articulating a particular felt and recognized need for communications, Bruce having very clear ideas that are visionary and institutionally, an institutional umbrella where we should be going in terms of innovation in data and digital management. Right. James working in the field trying to think through what we do with such things as ArcGIS. We don't even own ArcGIS, right? Yeah. And the hardware that's necessary to support operations for our fieldwork programs. We have a group of people who are deeply informed, and I'm not certain that that group itself can't provide an awful lot of the leadership that we need to move forward. That may be. I think we still need someone who. Social media manager. Well, yeah, it may not be the social media manager. That might not be the right model, but someone who really has the authority to help coordinate the efforts between the Agora and Corinth, for example. And not to suggest that either one of you is not doing great work. You are. That's not my point. But we're not going to see the kind of synergies and kind of cooperation and collaboration for which there is the potential without some overarching coordination.
We need someone focused on the big picture. I mean, the closest model is what we've done with George and the development teams last year. That's the closest model. We need a team like that, something like that. Again, someone who can go around and this is their focus for the entire institution, focusing on the IT needs across the board, right, with staff, with a budget who can implement.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Just in terms of, is it helpful to have Mary Jane or others? And here's another comment. I'll read that in just a minute. And others present their particular needs. A coordinator needs that information, right? So Mary Jane does need to be working with a coordinator. Natalia does need to be working with a coordinator and suggesting that 10K is an appropriate budget for sustaining some stuff. And someone to kind of oversee all of that. As it stands now, I guess the director does that stuff. But I see this manager as doing that sort of thing. And again, Mary Jane, we're not getting on the chat space here. Let's see. First of all, the first comments. That got everyone quiet, didn't it? No, not really. Anyway, if we're to have an effective communications policy at the school, there needs to be coordination at top levels, not piecemeal. How we manage this coordination is on the table, but I would agree with Mary Jane. The piecemeal approach, to me, is problematic. Now, I realize it costs money. I'm trying to, we have to be aware of that. It's not just a matter of, well, it's going to happen. It's a matter of thinking about priorities.
So one of the challenges I face, I just want to say, is our operations are in Greece. Most of our people are in Greece. Our techies are in Greece. Everyone's there, and we're meeting with donors that could have a passion for it. But I need to convey that in a certain way, and I can get to a certain level about it. But obviously, it's really important when you're looking for big bucks to be able, to put something in front of that's really powerful and important. So I had the iDig app, and I showed a couple things. But if I'm a real tech savvy person, I'm going to want to get real deep and start talking code and how you did this, and we end that discussion right there. So that's one of the things that's really important is I think we're heading in the right direction. I think this is a good discussion. I'm really excited for Saturday's discussion, and for me, what I'd really like to see is the ability to work on a very tangible proposal for funding with different stages, and your final stage, your wish list could be a $5 million plan. Our ultimate goal, that could be our ultimate goal, but then this is how we're going to also get to it as well. However that breaks out, that will help me tremendously. And then your ability, you guys in Greece, to be able to actually, if I do find people that are tech savvy, to get on Skype, to explain, to get in depth, and to do those types of things. that will no doubt require investment. We'll go a long way with something like that, okay? So I just want to make that clear, because we talked about with John before about that, you know, at some points. I do want to hear just for a second, because it really is important. So Guy and John are both here. How does this resonate, the technology in your excavations? How exciting is it to you, you know, both respectively?
Well, I'd say we're managing and doing things that we want to do, but we'd like to be able to do more completely. So I've been thinking all along that one of the things that we need is more interns who are able to retro-convert our data, because we've got a huge amount of stuff that's in a format that can be retro-converted. But as important as that is taking the data that we already have up and cleaning it up and making sure the links are working properly, and that the data is what's said in the card. But beyond that, I think that Bruce's model for somebody to go and facilitate the model that we've been working well with for management planning for Corinth, but also, as he pointed out, with your position, that you go around and make things happen, having listened to everybody. And I think that's a very sensible model, rather than having yet another chief.
Yeah, I mean, it's handy to
You know, I think it would help you all if we sat down and tried to develop a cost for what we think, sort of maybe several, you know, Model A, Model B, even Model C costs. Where we could just sit down and say, here's one structure. You know, I'd be happy to work with Hal, Bruce, I mean, everybody involved to try to shape this, because if we actually know what kind of numbers we need to be raising, because I just heard it said that, you know, the model we might be following is that we have employed in bringing George on board. The school traditionally has been averse to hiring people who are professionals in their field to carry out operations. He's the first professional person in development we've ever developed. Yeah, you know, but it's an interesting point. I mean, you know, we also don't have professional people in some of our areas of finance and in other areas who are trained in these areas and who stay up to date and current in leading developments in their own field. This is why I push so strongly on professional development, to make sure people are current in what's happening in their field. And that's actually what we're talking about here. We're saying, okay, you know, it's not the day when Bob Bridges goes out and buys a PC and then creates a database. We just did away with all those databases. We had 5 different databases tracking staff and members of the school in Athens, and we're moving to a single database, and Tarek is moving to have them all coordinated on MySQL. And we really need to get there, because that's how we ended up with this horrific mess of not having clean data for, you know, we've got deaf people, we've got people whose addresses are 10 years old, we have people with 3 different entries, we don't know which one is correct. You know, we've got, what, 13,000 records, and we're having even a problem in prioritizing the scrubbing of them. So I think it would be really useful to sort of look at the numbers, and that might help us figure out how we could all come to consensus about what we would give the vision committee, because we shouldn't give them, you know, options. We should say, this is what this group deliberating now in several meetings agrees would be the right way to go forward. And I'm just thinking practically, if you could look at the money associated with it, maybe it would help us decide what option we wanted.
John, do you have an observation?
I've been watching and seeing people work for several years now, and seeing James and Tarek and Bruce work together very nicely. I've seen Bruce work with both the archives and with the Ganavian. I assume, though I don't know who's actually in charge of the Blagan these days, but presumably that person can be brought in. That's a committee of 6 people right there. And I'm not quite sure why we're sitting here if we have those 6 people with all the knowledge that they need, that they bring to the table in terms of experience. If they sat around those 6 and talked about priorities, the person they wanted, the level they wanted, and the specific goals that they wanted that person to fulfill, My sense is from watching them work together, they'd have no trouble reaching some sort of consensus, creating some sort of priorities. And then we just get out of the way. They can tell us how much it costs and who they want. And have them run that person, not the other way around. But have that say, okay, go there and find out more about that. And let them direct the coordination that this woman is supposed to provide. But I have tremendous faith in what our IT people on the ground have done. And it seems to me we only really need to listen to what they think needs doing.
I would agree with that. I mean, I don't see this chief information manager as telling people where to get off, but rather your model is closer to what I would see as the ideal. That is sort of realizing and exploiting the potential of this group of 6 or whatever the number is. I think we all agree that people on the ground are doing absolutely fantastic work. Let's better coordinate. Let's better collaborate. That's for me, the ideal situation. Precisely how we do it, we still have to talk about, but being able to implement, to carry forward, to look for the funding, whatever the case is, we do need someone to pull that stuff together, to draw up on all the good work that people on the ground are doing and move it forward. Now, we have, what, 3 minutes or something left. What do we want to send forward and to whom, and where do we stand now, Jennifer? What do you
Well, the
need?
vision committee hasn't, should we say, progressed quite as effectively as the governance committee. So they're still very much in preliminary stages. But they have the proposal as currently revised and written. So I'm sure there will be discussion in that forum. And they may come back with, some specific questions about, the level of reporting and everything that's involved with that. But if we want to revise that in some way,
We need to continue our discussion and have a report in May.
well,
Also, we should just say that if Mr. Lavender, who we're meeting with,
Matt would mention.
right, says, I will come and conduct an audit and help you do this. I think that would be really important to have an expert outside voice. I mean,
I agree.
It's that outside expertise could be invaluable. It's important, as we always know when we bring in a consultant, that we make sure that they understand the specific cultural context in which we work. Because it's one thing to say, this works in America, it almost never works in Greece, how it might work in America for all of those reasons.
And some years ago when we had the Mellon grant, we did bring in a series of consultants, and it's partly because of Thorny Staples that we've gotten to the state we have with archaeological data. And I think it was incredibly useful. He didn't come in and say, this is what you have to do. He came in and discovered. I did that one time. I didn't make you do something else.
No, I didn't find that very useful.
Well, it's also why we have the website.
That's the Mellon, the ASCSA.
Did you all notice that the AIA has signed a contract with the Center for Digital Archaeology for protocols and standards to be kept in the field of archaeology and all of the cooperating institutions? We should at least know that.
Okay.
It's relevant to what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Thank you. I guess we're at the bottom of the hour. Tarek just sent an email, I guess, from Athens. He has prepared an audio report, and I think everyone's on the list that he sent the email to. So anyway.
I know everyone runs off, right? Everyone runs out of here now.
Yep.
But Jim, James, Bruce, kind of 3 minutes of your time, just real quick when we're done. Okay.
Can we just put into it some other time?
I just gotta set up these calls if we're gonna do it. That's no
Okay.
problem. It'll take three seconds. Sorry.
All right. Nope, we're done. I mean,
Thank you very much.
probably need the room back. Thank you all.
Okay, I just don't understand.
All right, so.
Okay, I'll say goodbye.
Bye.
I'll catch up later another time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for sitting through.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.